I'm visiting today with Dr. Isabel Reese and her client, Michael Mills. And I think the two of you have been using in the past not only some of Isabel's techniques she uses, but the tapping form of EFT, and then more recently, the optimal EFT.
Yeah.
And there's been some very substantial improvements along the way, and we're here to discuss those. So we were just talking before we went on there. One of these had to do with a heart-related issue. Can you describe that for me?
Just a very strong discomfort through the heart area, Gary, which was just sitting there. It wasn't painful, but it was like
tightness in the chest.
Yeah,
kind of
just
thing.
a tightness. Yeah. And just through some very...
Yeah, you know, what actually really happened, I think, that was right in the beginning when I started with the optimal and Michael came through and we had this tightness in the chest. Now, for somebody who's been sleep deprived for years and who's really struggled with it, the adrenaline obviously is a big factor, and that does affect the heart and the chest area. And so I showed him your video where you were doing healing on other people. Remember? Yes. On a crowd.
That was one of our public webinars.
Yes. And he watched it and it just dissipated. That was the big thing.
Okay. Let me get behind that a little bit, because I've had many reports like this. People will tune in, listen to, even some people will even be watching a recorded version of it. And as they go through it, they actually start getting results themselves, even though we may be working on someone else or maybe doing a kind of a group thing or something like that. And is that what I'm hearing here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit, Michael, if you would. While you were there, while you were watching this, you were having a tightness in the chest. And then, if you can recall, what was going on in the webinar, and then did the tightness in the chest go away immediately or an hour later or what?
Pretty much straight away.
Pretty much straight away. Okay.
As soon as you finished that particular aspect that you were doing on that webinar, Isabel asked me, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, where is it now? And it was down about 1 or 2.
Yeah.
And I would have described it as, 8 or 9, just prior to watching.
Yeah. So it was an 8 or a 9, then you were watching it, and it fell to a 1 or 2.
As soon as I stopped watching, yes.
Yeah, okay.
In the watch.
All right. And did it come back?
No.
And this has been almost, 2-3 months ago? It's been quite a while.
Yeah. And how long had you had it?
Oh, interesting enough, I did have it. It would come and go, Gary. It would come and go. It wasn't a constant thing for me, but I'll often be aware of a tightness, or it was just the other day, actually. It was like I had a hole in it was in the stomach area, in the abdomen area. Like there was something sort of gnawing away. That's as best I could describe it. But that passed in the day. But yeah, that was a very, very strong example for me as to the power of that particular technique, because Isabel had actually done a number of tapping episodes with me, and I just simply wasn't able to really respond.
Okay, so the tapping form of it wasn't really giving you the result, maybe temporary or something like that, but it wasn't. But it was the unseen therapist, we're calling her, the spiritual presence,
yes,
that got in there and got this job done.
Yes.
When the oftentimes very effective tapping thing wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge with Michael has been accessing emotion. And I think that's why tapping just was not very successful, because to access events or emotions, that was just, it's not, yeah, he's one of those few people where it's really been difficult, where, you know, he's totally detached, hasn't even got a lot of memory, I think, about the past or anything like that. So when we're dealing with a physical aspect, it's not always easy, because you can tap on the immediate symptom and that can relieve it a little bit, but it keeps on then coming back.
Yeah, yeah, it will do that unless you get to the actual cause.
Yes.
And cause in the tapping form of it is, you know, unresolved emotional issues, which you're having a hard time getting to, as you're mentioning.
Yeah.
But even below that is the more spiritual causes, the belief in separation and things like that, where unseen therapists can come in and even do things that you, Isabel, and Michael, and myself are unaware of.
Yes.
Okay. Doesn't always work that way perfectly for everybody, but we see enough of it to start talking about it a lot, you know. So what else was going on?
Yeah. So I mean, Michael has had, as we said, issues with sleep, you know, just really, really struggling to go to sleep, and adrenaline really being very high. And so that was one aspect that I have, you know, I've been able to help him a little bit, and then it keeps on coming back. And it's been a big struggle, I think, for him with energy levels with regard to sleep, but also I think the effect that it had on his health. And then some kidney issues. And yeah, so.
And bladder issues.
And bladder issues. With
big bladder issues.
Huge, big bladder issues, yes.
Yeah, I remember that being written up, the bladder issues. Do I not remember in the email someplace, Isabel, that there was some good progress on that?
Yes, there was. We did an optimal EFT session. It was about, I think, two weeks ago on a Saturday. But what was interesting is, and that time, he started sleeping so much better.
Yes.
And the bladder just changed and became amazing after just doing probably about half an hour to an hour, not more than an hour, of optimal EFT. But what I did is, because he doesn't record events or anything like that, I just got into the space. I put my hands on the bladder area, and it's my way of just connecting. It's sort of just my unique way, I think, instead of sitting across the desk. And I invited her in, and just to be, because there was no event, there was no nothing, and there was no emotion. And I just allowed, it was an allowing. And I stepped back, my ego, and Michael has total trust. And we definitely saw an incredible shift in that session.
Okay, and so the bladder problem has been, would you say, improved, completely relieved, 80% better? Or, give me some sense of the improvement.
For a period following that session, yes, it definitely improved, because my frequency was, Gary, and urgency around the bladder was like every 2 hours. So during the night, that's what would wake me up.
Yeah, sure.
I'm now in a place with my sleep where I'm confident that I will fall asleep, whereas previously I couldn't fall asleep.
Yes.
And now I fall asleep, but then the bladder would just wake me up every 2 hours.
So it still wakes you up every 2 hours?
No, following that session, I had about a week where it was sort of, so that would be 2 to 3 times during the night.
Uh-huh.
It came back to just once during the night. And then I've just recently, in the last week or so, it sort of has been very active again. And we had a session yesterday. And last night, had a fantastic night. I went to sleep at 12:30, just fell asleep, and didn't wake up until 6:30.
Ah, okay. Now, let me.
And I've had a couple of Probably I've had about 3 or 4 like that since
being the optimal, yeah.
Yeah, since the unseen therapist work.
Okay, so let me, if I can, kind of teach here a little bit, because we got an audience listening in about the way I see this, and then of course you guys can correct me if you think I'm off base someplace. Okay, so we get open to unseen therapists. To use Isabel's term, I forgot the exact words you used, but you will get very quiet. You get yourself out of the way. You get your ego out of the way, and so on. Those are the kind of things you were saying, I think. And Michael, you would do whatever you can do like that in a similar way. Unseen therapist comes in, does her job. Okay. Now, the question is that job complete? Is that job permanent, etc.? And a lot of people will view this as saying, well, if it isn't complete and it's not permanent, nothing really good happened because it was just temporary or something. But the overlay I want to put on that is that life gives us lots of emotions. Life gives us lots of things that happen after our session. And if we have a weakness in our body, a bladder, for example, or a sleep issue, for example, this kind of stuff, it's going to show up as a result of that. So the way I like to say it to people is that the unseen therapist will do the best job she possibly can, given the limitations of the therapist and the patient, meaning their ultimate openness to this, the guards at the gate and how active they may be. So the idea is we want to keep putting things on the table. As we put them on the table, they're no longer hidden by the guard at the gate. Unseen therapists can then do the job, and we need to keep doing that sometimes to get more and more permanence. Now, that was a lot of words. Would you correct that in any way?
Yeah, I would say it's, for me, Gary, I'm a very hard case. I've somehow been able to lock myself down so well through my life that I just, in a lot of respects, I just breeze through any event that happens in my life.
Yeah.
My father died, my wife died, without getting caught up in any emotion. So I've really locked down. And so it's a work in progress, but it's clearly working for me. And I know myself that I'm opening up, but yes, it's like peeling an onion.
Yeah, and the more we can open up, the more we can be available, if you will, to unseen therapists, the better job she can do.
And I do think that there's a lot more trust as well, because I think for Michael it was really hard because nobody could really help him. And we've had an amazing journey in the last year and a half, but I think he's learned, maybe the biggest thing I've seen is actually that he's actually learned joy. He's had to relearn joy from nothing. And that he's done, and he's just grown tremendously, spiritually and in every aspect. And now the emotion is starting to come through. The love for himself, all of that is coming through. So I think the healing has been on so many different levels. Self-acceptance, self-love, as all of these things that came with the package, even with the optimal therapist, working with unseen therapists, has opened up something new for Michael. I think in the last day.
That's actually one of the major benefits of unseen therapist is the joy piece of it, the ultimate love, etc. That is that spiritual representation. We often talk about the physical things that happen, the sleep, the bladder, the heart, and so on, and those are the kind of flags we wave, but underneath that is a conceivably much more important issue, that is joy, love, etc. Michael, do you have anything to say about that yourself?
Only, Gary, when I came to Isabel, it was sort of, I could describe myself as a dead man walking.
Okay.
And today, I just love where I am in this world, in just being, and I have a greater sense of purpose.
Yes.
All my life, I always wondered what my purpose was. Could never figure it out. Thought it might have been business, but it's not business. It's not business. And I finally think I do understand what my purpose is, and that's to lift my vibration.
To lift
my vibrational.
Oh, to lift your vibration. Yes. Okay. Into the more joyous areas.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the higher you go, the more joy, the more love.
Yes, of course, of course, of course.
I've done an enormous amount of reading, so intellectually, Gary, I know, I'm starting to connect the heart to all the research and all the intellectual stuff I've done about it, because I've been searching for a long, long time, and I could never connect with the heart.
Yes.
It was all upstairs.
You know, Michael, this is a thread. Thank you for that. This is a thread that I keep hearing more and more. You know, as we're doing previously, the tapping form of EFT, we'd get a lot of work done and people would be lighter in their life and this kind of thing. But I don't hear them keep talking about things like joy and peace. They'll talk about peace in a way that you'd normally talk about it. It's another level of it somehow. And these kind of conversations just keep coming up out of these sessions. And I thank you for that. You're echoing that as many others have.
Yeah. So, and I think the one thing that I do want to add, it's, and you're correct, Gary, in my observation working with so many people doing optimal EFT, is that you do not ever get it done, and you don't have to get things done, because there's an emotion, and I think Michael maybe went through a couple of things in the last few weeks emotionally, and then it just, that's the areas of the body where that holds the emotion. So for him it would be the bladder. So if you go out there, unless you live a life of perfection and there's no waves and no issues, then yes, I think the physical can be stabilized. But the minute you get anger or you get a frustration or you get sadness, that is where your body holds it for you in a safe manner. And so it will come back up again, but you will be able to deal with it a lot better. And the discomfort will become less, because you're dealing with emotion out there. You will not be that attached to outcomes. And as you become more and more detached to the ego, then of course the physicality will also improve accordingly.
And thank you, Isabel. And that's why I keep calling this a process. You know, along the way, we get what appears to be permanent physical results. Headaches go away and don't come back, for example. Back pain goes away. Maybe the heart thing for Michael will go away. The sleep deprivation goes away. But there's always something else out there that our emotions and our lack of perfection yet are going to show up physically. You know, so process. Okay. Listen, thank you guys so much. I'm really grateful for you, the two of you, to come together and share this story, you know, for others to learn from. It's going to be very, 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 very important. So thank you.
It's a pleasure, Gary. Okay. Bye.
Bye.